Peace and love, everyone. Welcome and thanks for being here live and by recording. I've got a car outside, got a lot of birds today. It's a beautiful morning outside. Once the car goes by, I'll turn the birds back up here. Of course, now they're quiet. Peace and love, everyone. So on Sunday at Not Church, we're exploring the Gospel of Mary. And so it led me to think about the Christian mystics who were women, and that perhaps we should do a little focus on mysticism, women in mysticism. Hi, Isa. Hi, Wanda. So that's what we're going to start with today a little bit. We're going to start with this title, Becoming Nothing for Love, reflections on a book called The Mirror of Simple Souls. The Mirror of Simple Souls. So peace and namaste, my friends, my soul friends. And today I want to reflect on a book that touches the essence of the mystical journey, The Mirror of Simple Souls by Marguerite Porete, Porete. I think it's pronounced Porete. Written in the Middle Ages, somewhere around 1290, by an educated, and we don't really know much about her, but an educated, because of the language she used, and well-traveled upper-class woman, because she's educated, she most likely was from an upper class, whose love for God, source, was so radical that it cost her her life. The church killed her. They burned her at the stake for this book. Not the first time such a thing had happened, and not the last. This text speaks directly to what I've glimpsed beyond the veil and my mystical awakenings and near-death experiences. And so I find it to be simpatico. The soul's absolute surrender into the infinite. That's what she's talking about. So Marguerite Porete writes about a particular kind of soul, and this is what got her into trouble, the simple soul. And this isn't simplicity of the mind, it's simplicity of the heart. It's a soul stripped bare of the egoic self, of self-will, so transparent and empty that God's light shines, source's light shines through it unimpeded. This soul, sometimes called the free soul, and there was a free soul movement, exists in a love that no longer needs to strive, explain, or seek. The foundation of this whole journey is love with a capital L, not the love we barter, human love for approval or affection, but the love that is pure, unspeakable, ineffable, and unconditional. That's what she's talking about. Way back, well, they killed her in the 1300s. In Marguerite's sense, charity is not about good deeds or merit. It's God's very breath through the soul. We've talked about this with the Aramaic Jesus, the Ruha, the breath of the soul, the spirit. It's the divine's breath right through us. These lovers of God, quote, can no more speak of God and their love. They can't separate them because their being has become one with it. Because in union, words fail. And in love, union is achieved. One of Marguerite's most daring noetic understandings in her heart is the annihilation of the will. And in my own life, and in particularly during my near-death experiences, and that thing that happened on the highway that day, and not just then, but at other times, I witnessed the profound freedom that comes when self-will falls away, or is taken away, in my case, for a temporary period of time. The free soul has no more need to choose between this or that virtue, between good or better. The will is so merged with the divine will that life itself becomes this pure flow, action without self-attachment. As Yeshua said, thy will be done. That's what he's talking about, thy will be done. At the heart of this surrender for Porete is a movement of naught, N-A-U-G-H-T, naught, zero. To be made nothing, emptied of ego, ambition, and even the attachment, and this is what got her in deep trouble, to spiritual practices, to dogma and doctrine. This nothingness, and we've heard other mystics talk about nothingness, isn't bleak. I went in my NDE into nothingness. It's not bleak. It represents the spaciousness into which the divine love pours itself without obstacle. It is a fullness of emptiness. And I know that's contradictory. I know it's paradoxical. And as I've often said, after my death and return, the fullness can come when we get out of our own way. That's the practice of meditation. That's what it's for. That's what it does. One of the things it does other things too. We've talked about in our 10-part series on somatic meditation. It can do other things too. But one of the major things it does spiritually is it helps us get out of our own way. And what's the end of this soul's journey? Such a soul's journey. It's union. And maybe it's union in this life, but it's definitely union in the next. And it's not theoretical union. It's not dogmatic union. It's a living union with a capital U, indwelling of the holy, of the sacred, of the prana, of the chi, of the Holy Spirit within the soul of the Christ consciousness. A loftiness beyond reach of reason. And we've talked a ton about that. It's beyond the reach of reason. It's a knowing beyond knowing, a resting in the very beingness of the isness of the divine. And interestingly, to me anyway, Marguerite points out that such a soul takes leave of virtues, ethics and morality. It takes leave of these things. They don't discard goodness, but a soul in that state no longer strives for it because their goodness flows naturally because love with a capital L itself animates them. Virtue becomes an effortless thing that's as simple as breathing. May we all attain such a state in this life. Marguerite, bold and clear, also warns us that reason alone cannot take us there, can't lead us into the state of being. And that's what mystics tell us again and again and again, all over the world. Reason may help us begin, help us speak about it. I'm using reason to talk about it right now, but it can't complete the journey no matter how many books we read, no matter how many sessions we attend, no matter how many retreats we go on or conferences we go to, and to learn and learn and learn. It's never going to lead us there. Love, must eclipse reason. The direct living experience of God must, if this is the journey, it has to replace the intellectual frameworks. This got her into deep trouble with the church. That's why they killed her. She divides her text into these stages of spiritual ascent, leading the soul through layers of self-emptying, love, detachment, and divine indwelling, which is a map we find elsewhere. We find it in this book too. Evelyn Underhill talks about the same thing, pervading lots of different mystical lives, self-emptying, love. She calls it detachment. I might call it non-attachment, and this divine indwelling. And it's a map for losing everything that isn't the divine, everything of us that's in the way. And in this losing, finding all with a capital A. In Marguerite's Mirror, her book, I hear this echo of what I saw on the other side. Love is not something we achieve. Love is something of what remains when everything else falls away. So I pray, may we too dare to be made simple, free, and nothing that we might be filled with everything. So here we have another person who dared to speak against what the church was portraying. And they killed her for it. They gave her a trial. She could have repented. She could have pulled the book. She said, no, this is truth. And they killed her for it. But here's the secret. She knew where she was going. It might have hurt, probably did, to be burned at the stake. It must have been terrible. But she knew where she was going. That's the power of the presence itself. Well, peace and my friends. Let's take a look over at the chatty chat. Wanda, good morning. Hi, Loved yesterday's talk. Thank you very much. We're going to continue in that strain, talking about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. It's not a very long book, and most of it's missing, but we're going to dive deep into what we know. And there's a couple of books I'm going to be using to help us along the path. Good morning, Basilia from Connecticut. So I'm glad to hear that, Kristen, that you found this meaningful. Love is what remains when everything else falls away. That is the essence of our soul. Love, this is what the divine is. So many mystics in the Western tradition talk about love with a capital L being the divine being itself. It's exactly what I saw when I was dead. It is the essence of who we are. Good morning, Octavio. All right, so we've got 20 minutes today because that was a quick talk. I'm going to set my clock to 8:30. Go to my alarms. 8:30. Make sure it's not too loud. Yeah, ooh, that would have been a wake-up call. Yeah. All right, so get the alarm set. If you're just joining us today by recording or live, a very simple meditation practice, if you've not meditated before, is choose a practice, choose a sacred word or a mantra or a chant. And as you breathe into your belly through your nose, you can breathe into your mouth if your nose is all stuffy, but I usually make sure my nose is not stuffy so that I can breathe more easily. Breathe in to my belly, letting my chant, my word, I use the Jesus prayer. You can use Om, maybe. I like Om myself. Pause and full belly, gentle breath. Exhale, riding your mind up your spine to maybe your third eye, to your crown, or even just out your nose, but chanting your word, your prayer as you exhale. Pause and then repeat. And when your mind wanders, and it will wander, return to your prayer, return to your sacred word, return to your chant or your mantra. Now, we've been practicing somatic meditation, which is basically body based meditation. And so, as your mantra begins to fall away, if you're using your breath and you've trained your mind, your brain, because the brain rewires through all of this practice, if you rewired your brain through long practice, eventually what's going to happen is the chant just falls away, but your mind doesn't run off. Your mind stays with your breath. So stay with your breath. If you're able to just stay with your breath, and you can help yourself with this by listening to your breath with your ears. It's a listening meditation. You can feel it way back in the top back of your throat. There's this cool space where the nasal cavities come into the throat. You can feel your breath there. You can feel it go down into your belly and feel it fill your belly, fill your lungs while you're listening to it. And just use your breath as the basis of your meditation, because when you reach this point, you're already circumventing the thinking mind, well, the discursive mind, the mind of language. And so if you're able to control your mind enough with mental focus and breath with your mantra and your chant, and that falls away and your mind doesn't run off in some crazy direction as it normally will, just use your breath. Just use your breath and slow your breath down. Slow your breath down and become quieter and quieter, and use your breath, your somatic meditation, your breath and your body. And if you practice yoga, asanas, it's you can incorporate this practice into your yoga practice. And I've talked about this in other places. So anyway, let's jump into it. I'm going to turn my lights down a little bit today. They're a little bright for me for meditation today. I'm going to turn them down. That's a little bit better. There we go. All right. I'm going to move my mic away so you don't have to listen to me breathing, but beginning breathing in, pausing, releasing exhale. Relaxing your muscles as you go on your own. Peace and love, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. Peace and love. I'm headed down east today to do a little more somatic therapy because it's working. Peace and love, everyone. See you soon.